Republican Club's Direct Line Live with our special guest today, Barry Donadio, former Secret Service and 2A advocate. And we have two special hosts today. We've got our hostess with the mostest, Jackie Saxton from the OK state of New Jersey. And then we've got the Honorable Deb Ray from the Honorable Deb Ray from St. Mary's and Calvert County, and I believe she is running for office again. So everyone go visit debrayfordelegate.com and take it away, guys.
All right. Thank you, Dwight. Yeah, New Jersey's a pretty mess state, but we have a pretty okay candidate for Republican for governor, so go out and vote if you're in New Jersey. So yeah, Barry, thank you for joining me. Deb, thank you for co-hosting with me. I'm not usually the lead host, but Mark is on vacation in Las Vegas, so you guys get me instead. I'm really excited to talk with you guys about tonight. Obviously, we're here to talk about 2A predominantly. It's something that a lot of Republicans care very strongly about, and a lot of Democrats are very against. So obviously, Barry, we can start with you and tell us a little bit about your background, how you got passionate about 2A to begin with. And, I'm sure everybody knows you, or everyone involved in the state party knows you as the Sergeant at Arms, right? I think that's how we first met.
Yes, ma'am, at your service. I guess my in firearms began with none other than the Boy Scouts up in New York, where I was born and raised, not far from where you are in Jersey. And I was part of a program when I was 12 years old, and that was on how to shoot. They taught us basic marksmanship skills. We were taught by many Vietnam veterans. I had such an honor and a privilege to do that. And quite frankly, we became very good at it. So we were using little bolt action 22 caliber rifles, and we were hitting targets like you wouldn't believe at the age of 12. And I was first got my first rifle at a very young age and was practicing ever since. Shortly after that, at the age of 17, I went into the Army National Guard up in New York and served in the infantry. I was very proud to do that. Later in the military police. Beyond that, I went into the United States Air Force at the 106 Rescue Wing on Long Island, and I have a very proud history with them. The men and women there are spectacular and Long Island's finest. And from there, I joined the United States Secret Service, and I served from 2002 to 2010 under the Bush and Obama administration, Uniform Division Secret Service, as well as the Emergency Response Team. And I have a great history with the Secret Service and a proud lineage of serving with the finest, and I do mean the finest men and women in law enforcement, even today, United States Secret Service all the way.
That's amazing. I think anyone would say that's an incredibly impressive resume. And obviously when we're in a time where so many people are questioning whether or not we should be funding our men and women in blue to begin with, I think that you're a true testament as to why we should continue funding them.
Right. We need to fund police in all races, color. So we have to be very careful. I think maybe to solve some of the complexities in law enforcement, it might take some more training. It's not easy to go out and protect somebody. They get a lot of training. Maybe they can use more. But the bottom line is, my entire career, I've seen men and women go out of their way, risk their lives for anybody. A 911 call comes in. If somebody needs help, nobody ever asks on the radio, "Oh, who is it?" or "What nationality are they?" or religion are they? No way. That's never happened in my career and never will on my watch. If I see somebody that needs help, even now, I'm not even a law enforcement officer. I'm going to help them, and it doesn't matter what they like. And because I'm law enforcement in the heart, the other, hundred thousands of others that are there serving the people of the United States and their local community.
Awesome. Deb?
Barry, it's great to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while.
You got my vote already.
Thank you.
One heck of a Second Amendment advocate. A little bit of a mentor to me, in a sense. So, thank you for everything you have done in Maryland, best you can, and everything that I know that you're going to do. So thank you for your service as well, Ms. Ray.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get on into it. I was really excited last night when the news came across my phone that the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, U.S. Court of Appeals, found that the federal law saying that 18 to 20-year-olds could not buy a handgun was found unconstitutional. Now,
Right.
I know they're eventually going to take it, the government will appeal that, of course, but why don't you talk to us about that?
Well, the first thing I thought is what took them so long.
Yeah.
Very easy for people that simply read the law, read the Constitution, and know the facts. The facts are the unorganized militia consists of those starting at the age of 18. We all hear about this debate that, Second Amendment only applies to the military. That is so far from the truth. If you look into the matter, you see it was never meant for the militia whatsoever. It is meant for the people, the people. Very simple. Just like all the other rights that you have, freedom of religion, for instance, and speech was not for the militia. It says the people. It's for the people of the United States, which means you and
Right.
I. You do not need to be a member of any military to have those weapons. And quite frankly, before 1934, the National Firearms Act, I really don't know of any federal law since the Second Amendment was created that would restrict you from buying anything. That includes a cannon, for that matter, or anything else. And I haven't noticed the problem, of mass shootings to our attention. But I really think this is more of, if we want to correct gun violence, there might be some things that we can do. And I think that we can agree with on all parties, Democrat, Republican, absolutely 100% certain of that. And I know that that's probably what you think as well, Ms. Ray. But the matter is, we just have to, do a better job at controlling what we put on the television, for one, and the stuff that we're feeding our children. Social media. There's a lot of terrible stuff on computers. Parents need to do a better job of making sure the kids are not on some sites. And quite frankly, I think it's just poisoning their minds.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess similar, in a tangential way of gun safety and being around children, I know another thing that's come up in recent months is the conversation of SROs, and a lot of parents on the left are like, well, we shouldn't have these people in our schools. We shouldn't have police officers at our schools keeping our kids safe. So do you feel like there's a barrier there as well?
I can't imagine why you would have a problem having a police officer in a school. We have no problems with police officers outside of a plane or inside of a plane. I'm with a police officer in a Capitol building. This is just stuff that makes really no sense to me whatsoever. I would love to sit down. Maybe I should sit down with people that think that way and maybe try to understand it and maybe tell them, hey, you ever hear of fight fire with fire? We can't wish problems away. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. I know, a horrible person with a gun or a maniac in a mall can be stopped by a law-abiding gun-carrying citizen that just cares for his people, his country, and his family, and acting in self-defense. I think that stops, but trying to disarm an entire society, which was law carrying, now ladies can't be dictated by the state. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, I disagree with it. At the end of the day, it's an infringement, just what the Constitution says, and there should be no infringement at all to you owning guns, especially women. I think women should even have more of a right to have firearms, beauty and integrity. Right off the bat, until proven otherwise. Now, there could be somebody out there who's a very bad person that maybe shouldn't have a gun, and I get that. I understand. But at the end of the day, you're a warm-blooded American woman, and there is nothing that should stand in your way of legally owning a firearm right now, today.
Right.
Yeah, and to your point, I know they don't get the kind of media attention they deserve, but I have seen a couple of instances that people have reported on of, a shooter comes into a church and some, in Texas, and somebody who was a law-abiding, citizen was able to protect so many more people who could have potentially died because they were able to apprehend the shooter because they were carrying. And there have been other instances like that. So I think you make a great point. It's like the best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
The way it works. And that's what the founding fathers intended. When the Second Amendment was written, these people, there's nobody that were as brilliant as them. They created this country. Okay. I know there's a lot of opinions out there and a lot of people that say they know all this and that, and that's great. But you know what? They didn't write the Constitution. We have some very brilliant people that founded this country that knew exactly what they were talking about. There's no question. There was never any, until recently, there was never any question of what the Second Amendment meant. Some of us older people, like 50 and over, like myself, there was never a discussion between Republicans and Democrats as far as what the Second Amendment. This is a new phenomenon, a new propaganda that, quite frankly, is taking away the rights of not only Republicans, but Democrats. And we all need to stand up. All of us as Americans need to say, that's enough. It's not working.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing this. Go find your next victim. Go find your next subject. But it's not going to, you're not going to take the gun rights away from American citizens, which is what we all, Republican, Democrat, or whatever you are. We are Americans, and we need to stand up, and we need to have it stop. And this ruling in the federal court is outstanding. Okay, but that's exactly it's easy. That's exactly what it says in the Second Amendment. As far as federal law, it's backed by a federal code, the unorganized militia. It's all right there. So it's probably an easy decision for that federal court to make if they read the law.
And yet, go ahead, Deb.
Oh, I was just going to take us down another road. Do you want to finish your thought first?
No, because I was going to do the same thing. So you go on ahead.
Oh, okay. So I'd like to get your all's idea about this. So I went to a meeting and somebody brought this up, and understand I'm asking the question. This is not me advocating for this, because I really like to get some more feedback and an understanding where people stand on this. So when I was in the legislature, we passed a law to give voting rights back to anybody who's out of jail. So basically, if you are out of jail, you have the right to vote. Okay. So when we were discussing this in this group, a gentleman brought up and said, well, the same should apply to firearm rights. You should get back your Second Amendment rights. If you're out of jail, even if you were a felon or committed the crime with a firearm, etc., that you should get that right back. And if we had a law like that, then that would, if you didn't think that person should have that right, well, then they should stay in jail, right? Kind of some of these early release things and probations and all that would almost kind of go away. So I was just wondering, what do you think about that? What are your initial thoughts?
See, she comes in with the stumper of a question. I've been asking the nice questions.
Got an answer for that, and whether people like it or not is another matter. But let's end right now that the founding fathers are with us right here in this interview. And we would ask them, do you get to lose any of your rights at all in your life once you have them? They would say no.
Actually, they would say yes.
I don't know about that.
It's in the Constitution that you could lose your life.
Yes, treason.
Well, no, there's more. If you read the Fifth Amendment, it's about before, you're deprived of life and other things, there's the right to a fair trial. So, but it is specific in there that they did say, yeah, you could lose your life based on what you did.
Okay, well, my interpretation is, for instance, you don't lose freedom of speech, correct? We don't lose freedom of religion.
Right. Right.
But what you are, if you are a mass murderer, you do not lose freedoms of the Constitution as far as I know, other than your liberty. Now, you're being punished but you also have a right to be out once you fulfill your punishment. Am I correct?
Right.
So,
Right.
the bottom line is, I don't see anywhere in the Constitution where it says whether you're a felon, a criminal of any sense. Now, this is not what I want either, and I know the question is excellent, and I've heard this before. But if we're true constitutionalists and we're going to abide by the Constitution fully, the bottom line is they are. If I'm reading the Constitution correctly, they can. But what makes a significant factor here is what makes a felon with a gun very, very insignificant. The rest of us with a gun.
True.
It's the way it's supposed to be, folks. That they didn't have this when the Constitution came out. They weren't able to track felons. You, me, or anybody could have committed a felony, let's say in Massachusetts, moved to Georgia, and no one would know anything, right? There would be no way. There would have been a felon carrying guns or even a cannon back then. So what made that insignificant is your defense, your right to a defense. The problem with today is they are taking away your right to defend yourself from even, let's say, a felon that gets those guns illegally now. So that makes the armed felon significant because we can defend ourselves. I mean, we can get animal rights people to come on this show and be very, very upset if we declare a tiger and let it go loose in the woods and say, well, this thing can't defend itself. That's absolutely horrible. We can't allow this to happen. They're doing the same to you right now. You cannot defend yourself. It's just the bottom line. So quite frankly, the whole thing has to be followed by the Constitution. That's what they wanted. It was never meant to be this way.
It's interesting because I guess my take on it, and I think you're right, Barry, that there's a difference between the way the Constitution is written and interpreting that the way it's written and the things that we personally feel are right or wrong. Because if you're asking my personal opinion on what I would do in that situation, I would say, yeah, if somebody committed a felony with a gun, my take would be, well, that person should fail a background check to get a gun, because it's like, you've proven you cannot be responsible with a firearm. Why should we give you a fire? It's like if your child goes and burns himself by touching a hot pot on the stove, you're not going to go and say, go cook dinner.
Right. So, I mean, there's two scenarios. We can go by how we have life today, which is, restrictions, but we also go so far in another extreme. If you get in an argument with your wife that's designated as a domestic, you could lose your gun rights in an argument with a wife or an alleged assault, shall we say. I just don't believe that, those that were alive when voting for the Second Amendment meant any of that. I just don't believe that. So you also have the other side of the fact that if we're going to follow the Constitution the way it was meant to, then felons, not that I want this, but felons would be armed. But it would be insignificant because that means every one of us would be armed. So that's an armed felon as far as I'm concerned. If there's 30 people in the room that have guns, well, I think the felon's going to be a really well-behaved one that has a gun because we all have guns. So what's he going to do? He's no threat. He's no threat.
Well, if you guys are listening in the chat and you have an opinion on that one way or another, we'd love to hear what they are, and we'll maybe take some questions from the audience.
Sure, we have an opinion on that.
I'm sure everybody does. But while we see what comes in from that, one of the other things I was thinking is, even in the face of having the written Constitution in front of us and numbers and statistics, people on the left are still thinking the answer to gun violence is stricter gun legislation. So, and then you look at places like Baltimore or Chicago that have the strictest gun legislation in the country, and the number of gun-related crimes and homicides are greater than ever. I mean, my personal opinion on it is, if somebody who wants to do harm wants to get a hold of a gun, they're going to get a hold of it, whether it's legal or not.
Absolutely, 100% correct. And a lot of these gun laws restrict lawful people that follow the law. If we go to Baltimore tonight and illegally buy a pistol, yes, if we get caught with that pistol, we'll get enhanced fines and penalties and go to jail long. see how that prevented me from getting that gun. What's concerning me now also, I do visit the Baltimore City Police Department's Facebook page regularly. They're taking very advanced weapons off of criminals off the streets now. Using junky pistols. They're using high quality pistols that don't jam, that function flawlessly, that our special operators are even using overseas. Okay, this is a big concern. So maybe I guess you could say they're getting smarter, or they're just getting better access to illegal guns that happen to be very good functioning weapons. This is a big problem. But you're absolutely right. It doesn't stop anything. Well, remember the Brady bill was supposed to fix all this, right? Remember, who remembers Brady, chief of for Reagan, right?
For Reagan.
Remember that? Okay. Horrible what happened to him. He got shot during the attempted Reagan assassination, and then he came up with the Brady bill. 7-day waiting period now. That's why we have a 7-day waiting period. Because not because an expert said we should have a 7-day waiting period. It's because they interviewed a madman. Okay. They interviewed a madman who tried to kill a president. And he said, oh, well, if I had a couple of days to think about it, maybe I wouldn't have done it. And then thus far, we have the 7-day waiting period.
Right.
They won't listen to me. I have experience. They might not listen to Delegate Ray there, who knows what she's talking about, but they'll listen to somebody who tries to kill another person illegally and then base an entire law on what that person says, which doesn't make much sense to me either.
I was gonna say, I wasn't alive during the Reagan administration, but I get a feeling this guy was thinking about it already for a few days. You don't wake up in the morning and like, I'm going to attempt to shoot the president today.
I agree. And thank God Reagan made it and everything went. But, a lot of these laws are based on, quite frankly, fear. I do talk to the other side. I do sit down and I talk to a lot of people. A lot of them are taking my gun classes. A lot of people you would never expect. Now, in the past year, taking my gun classes, school teachers, people that are, quite frankly, admit to be on the liberal side of politics. And that's great. I'm glad they're over, and I'm glad they're taking, so they see what's going on. And they see the nature of shooting and really have a better opinion on some of the stuff that, they form their opinions on when they get to shoot and see really how hard it is, number one, and the concentration, and that it's not easy to be law enforcement and make a split-second decision that could potentially end their lives or someone else's life.
Education is so important.
Absolutely, on both ends. And, I think the laws that they're making are fear-based.
Yes.
It's easy to get sucked into, there was a madman that shot someplace up. Let's take all the guns away. We know that doesn't work. Okay. There's gun violence in England, right? They don't have guns, supposedly. So, they've done a good job trying to keep crime down with what they have. But the fact of the matter is, you can't make gun laws and think all the problems are going to go away. It doesn't work. It's not working in Chicago. It's not working in Baltimore. Okay. None of those laws are stopping anything. There's guns all over the place.
Well, I know when I sat on the judiciary, we would often hear stories that an individual was picked up using a firearm in a crime, but then that charge was dropped as part of the plea deal or something else. So I know Republicans have been putting a bill forward for the last couple of years in the Maryland General Assembly to say, to make it a mandatory sentence if you are found guilty of a crime using a firearm during that crime, then you have a mandatory sentence. I think it's of 5 years. But the moms that demand action won't get behind the bill. The Democrats don't like it, usually because they don't like the mandatory sentence of anything. And I just look at it and think, well, here's a common sense thing that we could do where you're actually targeting the criminal and not law-abiding citizens. Why wouldn't you support it?
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant on automatic sentencing because it could be something, you could be caught up in a mistake or something like that, and you get charged with something, and now you have an automatic 5 years for, who knows what it could be. But if you know anything about criminal justice system, there's cases, speeding. What if imagine a 5-year mandatory speeding, right? Let's just say, for example, well, I'm going 56 miles an hour instead of 55, and I get 5 years because it's a mandatory. So I'm a little hesitant about any kind of a mandatory thing on any crime. It probably could work in some instances. I would be concerned for it. That's all. But it doesn't mean that you're not right, Deb. And it's just an opinion that I have on my experience and knowledge and also training. But I just think at the end of the day, these laws that are meant to stop the gun violence are not doing anything at the end of it. I think they should stop making it a political topic, and I just think they should, quite frankly, leave people alone. You can go right now and buy rifles and shotguns, and I guess with the pistol, the thing is concealability. But can any of us go and get a rifle or shotgun and cut it down and make it concealed? So
right.
Obviously, political topic. People buy into it, believe that, yes, if we pass yet this one more law, there'll never be a shooting, or there'll be less shooting somehow, or if we completely rid the streets of guns, which can never happen, obviously, because the guns they're catching up in Baltimore aren't sold legally. They're, we'd have to ask the police department. I don't know where they're coming from. They're not coming from a gun shop, and they're not being sold. So they're coming from somewhere. So, restricting law-abiding people just trying to go get a pistol permit, or less guns somehow restricted. I just don't see how that's helping anything, and it hasn't done anything. If anything, we see escalation, don't we?
Right. Absolutely.
And I personally blame the stuff that is on television that the children are watching. I grew up. You can laugh all you want. I grew up watching Little House on the Prairie. Happy Days, Boat, and there was a happy ending after every 30 minutes. It was a 30-minute show or so, and there wasn't what you see on television. It makes a difference when you sit a 5-year-old in front of a television and people being murdered, in a sitcom show, and there's no adult supervision of the parents. Well, it's traumatizing. I imagine it would be a light form of a PTSD of a child just sitting watching the stuff that's on television all the time today.
So I guess you don't want to talk about the most recent Marvel movie then, which I thought was amazing.
If it's rated PG, I guess it would be okay,
I know. Well, Marvel's thing is they don't want to make anything greater than PG-13, but I mean, absolutely, people die in Black Widow and all the other Marvel movies, but
Well, I'm a new fan of Wonder Woman. What she did in that movie was incredible. I loved it.
The first one, the second movie was awful.
I'm trying to remember which movie I saw. I guess the first one, my favorite part was the machine gun nest, where she takes out a whole machine gun nest in World War I. It was quite amazing. But, but I'm an adult and you're adults. But should a 5-year-old watch that? Should a 7-year-old watch that? And parents don't put a filter on that. And I think really that's what's doing it. We have a culture of violence that's going back now, maybe starting on maybe 25 to 30 years, where it's just like unrestricted stuff that children access on computers and TV. And I really think that's what it is. Now, I'm not saying restrict anybody. I just think we need to teach each other and teach maybe Hollywood, hey, yeah, you have the power to go and put this stuff out, but don't. It's bad for the kids. It's not good. It's not helping anybody. So that's what the message we need to spread. We don't need to take away freedom of speech or say, no, you can't, you can't share that. We just have to do a better job of keeping that out of the hands of our children and watching what they go on the computer with, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking about that idea earlier of gun education and that a lot of people, maybe if they went through a course where they saw what it really takes to be a responsible gun owner, what goes into actually picking up a gun and aiming and shooting it, that they, my favorite picture that came out from the state party's HQL training that you did was of Faith Loudon and like saying the idea of like, we should be putting this on t-shirts. Like, this is what gun ownership looks like. It's not always, a big tough guy, right? It could be somebody like Faith Loudon, like an older woman who I thought that was amazing.
By the way, Faith did good. I have a bunch of older ladies that now I invite them if they want to come to almost every class I have. They're in their 70s, and you know what? They can shoot. Don't break into their house, okay? And they're legally armed to protect themselves, which is great. But I love empowering people. I love empowering women. And what this is, it's a conquering of fear at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, okay? A lot of this is fear-based. And, you know, we've given up a skill that every American had from the founding of this country all the way to when we started restricting this stuff in 1934. Your grandmother back then, let's say in the 1890s, grandma had a gun, grandpa had a gun, everyone had a gun just in case, okay? And they all knew how to use it too, okay? We forgot about that. It was a perishable skill, and I'm teaching people to relearn that skill.
Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about the HQL classes that you do, and what does that typically look like when you go in for the day?
Okay, well, I try to tell a lot of jokes because it's 4 hours that I wouldn't want to sit through to get a gun. So I just try to tell a lot of jokes and try to make people happy, and show a lot of videos to tell you the truth. But the 4-hour class is required in the state of Maryland in order for anybody to buy a handgun. So it's that 4-hour class. You are required to shoot 1 round at the shooting range, and we let people shoot more stuff than that. But it's 1 round, you hit the target, and you're out of there. You have to get fingerprinted, submit your application online to the Maryland State Police, and then you'll wait about 7 days, and then you'll get what's called your handgun qualification license. Now it is just a number they send you on a piece of paper, and that will empower you to do only one thing, and one thing only, that is to buy a pistol in the state of Maryland, and that is it. Now, a lot of these people that go for this, they get it, and then they want to apply for their wear and carry permit. There are categories that you have to qualify on under the Maryland State Police website. So I encourage everybody to go and do that if they're going to be seeking an HQL license. But I run into a lot of people say they're thinking about doing it. I say to do it now because the clock is ticking. If somebody pushes through a legislation, if we hit a roadblock somewhere, and you know, we can have a time period to where we might not even be able to get pistols. We just don't know what the future holds. And let's not. Last summer there was a shortage. You could not get a pistol. They were gone. The manufacturers couldn't. There was a tremendous panic. There was all the guns, all the bullets were bought up. Now we've gone from 9mm pistol bullets costing 18 cents a shot to $1 a shot. $1 a shot. Okay, so times have changed. Things are different. If you're thinking about getting an HQL, do it now. Don't wait.
All right. Well, yeah, and so that's one thing I know that you have to plug. The other one is, and I know Dwight put that in your picture when we advertised the show, you wrote a book. I
wrote 2.
You wrote 2 books. That's 2 more books than I've written.
You can do it. I'll show you how. A lot of time and quiet.
See, quiet is where I struggle. I can't go longer than 30 seconds without talking.
With quiet too, and that's why it took me a long time to write these books, because I don't get quiet either, and you need to have some of that. But I wrote this first book here. I could try to fit it in the screen here. TWA Flight 800 First Responder Witness Account. It's right there. I published that in 2013. It is on sale on Amazon across the globe, Barnes & Noble, you name it. It's sold everywhere. And basically, I was honored to be one of the first responders on the crash of TWA Flight 800, July 17, 1996. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do much because what we know now, everybody perished on that flight. It was a very horrible evening. But in the book, I discuss what I saw that evening. And I also put in the book some other things I've done during my fire department career. I was a volunteer fireman as well, and a volunteer EMT up on Long Island as well. So I've written, and then I decided to do a fiction book after that, which is That Day When Hell Froze Over, right there. And released, and I kind of know about that. So an elite group of warriors that is sanctioned by the Pope to do a special mission in what we call today Iran.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah. So that was book number 1. What's book number 2?
What was the second one?
The number 2 right here. The number 1 is TWA Flight 800. I released this in 2013, and this one got released about 2 months before the pandemic started, and then I couldn't go and promote it. So I'm actually doing a book signing this Friday in Bohemia, New York at the La Quinta Inn. And that's going to be at 6 o'clock. And so we're opening the doors and people could come. I'm buying pizza for whoever wants to show up.
Oh, and it's New York pizza. Oh.
New York pizza. You're going to have a good, but it's only going to be New Yorkers there. So you know about New York pizza, probably.
That's pizza to them. They're spoiled.
They're spoiled. Is right. That's correct.
Dwight will tell you after the show how amazing Maryland pizza is. I'm sorry. My dad grew up in Brooklyn. My mom grew up in Staten Island. I'm all about the New York pizza.
Dwight knows about Long Island pizza. I'm going to let him elaborate on that, but he knows just as well as I do about pizza. Yeah, absolutely.
Stained glass pub in the chat.
Yeah, got a private message. Here we go. He rests his. Ain't that something? But one final thing, that we need to touch on. We can't, as Americans, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. We have to speak about Second Amendment rights. Okay, push for legislation. This Democrats that have guns, obviously, they hunt. They're out there. Eastern Shore, Maryland Democrats are as conservative as we are here. So it's not a lost cause. We have to convince the other side that this isn't about making yet another law that doesn't work, okay, to solve this gun problem. And I don't know if you agree. Let me ask you two, what do you think the problem is? If it's not the violence on the TVs that we see our children, get poisoned with, and the culture of violence let me ask Ms. Ray and Jackie, what do you think it is?
I think of it as the lack of the family unit. Where we don't have, you look at the statistics and the number of families that don't have a father, a strong male figure in the household. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're both spot on. I think that it's starting young. I mean, if you're looking at some of these school shooters, they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're not adults. Their brains aren't fully formed yet. I mean, these are people who they obviously weren't getting the support that they needed at home, where they were raised sitting in front of the TV and learned fully from playing Grand Theft Auto, or anything like that, or Halo, and so I think that you're both exactly right on that. And that has a huge thing to do with it. But, and the other part of it is again, is what we're seeing in the media, not just from fictional things, but things on the news is all that the left is saying is guns are bad, we need to get rid of all of them. So then the people who are growing up with these values are not even given the opportunity to, kids are impressionable, young adults are impressionable. If everybody they're watching on TV says guns are the bane of evil in all existence and nobody should have a gun, they're not going to even want to learn responsible gun ownership. So then all of these people who are being manipulated by the media to use guns to get what they want are not going to be countered by those who want to use guns to protect themselves and others. And then you see people on the news like Nancy Pelosi who are very anti-gun, and yet they surround them, she surrounds herself with armed guards. So which one is it?
Right. There's a lot of people in political positions that kind of forgot what it's like to fend for themselves on the streets of wherever. And, they have that position. I was one of these people that protected them. They deserve the protection. All respect to her. And I truly believe, whether it be her or some of the other people that speak out most against guns, I do believe that they think that they are helping. I believe that. I think they really think it works. And I would love Miss Pelosi to come to my gun class. I would love to go shooting with her and teach her and say, well, ma'am, you're just dead wrong. No disrespect. I hear she's a pretty nice person and everything, and lived in Baltimore and all that great stuff. But the bottom line is, it's a lack of education. For instance, did anybody even know that our police officers, our retired and separated police officers that have credentials to carry in all 50 states, did you even know that they're restricted in many cases to only carry 10 shots in their guns? Now, I understand maybe they did that for a reason, or maybe they did that to somehow restrict civilians that may have gone out of whack somehow, and they could say, oh, well, they can only have 10 shots. But me, as a former law enforcement officer, if I'm carrying my firearm, and let's say I go to New York on vacation and some lunatic starts shooting in a mall, that's only 10 shots I have to protect Republicans and Democrats. Because in my position, we don't care what you are. We care that you're American, you're an bystander, and we're going to protect you. And that's what we are wired for. So you could throw all the politics away. I speak for the police officers that serve the people of the United States. I speak for the first responders, the veterans that would take action, even unarmed, would go in. But even Democrats or maybe the ones that are passing these laws probably don't even know the laws that they passed even restrict retired police from protecting people, that they just happen to be out there. And now I can only theoretically carry 10 shots in my, where I normally would be able to carry 17. Okay. So if anybody thinks that makes sense, I don't, and no, I think we have to work to correct many of these problems with some of these laws.
I think sometimes when the Democrats propose these laws, that they believe it's going to restrict the criminal. I know one of my debates, my opponent, he was trying to explain why we should only have 5 bullets in our firearm. And I was like, well, you're restricting me from defending myself. It's not restricting the criminal, because the criminal is a criminal for a reason. You're restricting the law-abiding citizen.
Nobody, and I do mean nobody, should be telling you how many rounds you need to protect your family. Or let's just say your infant baby that is in your home. When a criminal gang decides to do a home invasion, and they don't come in 1s and 2s, they come in multiples, okay? Mm-hmm. So why do they get to steal a gun and have a 30-round magazine, and you, home with an infant, maybe even breastfeeding, can only have 5 shots in your gun?
Exactly.
Absolutely not. We should all be standing up against it, no matter what political party you are. We got to stand together as Americans and solve the problem.
And we're seeing citizens step up and run because of those issues. I mean, I know a big one is that couple from, I believe they're Georgia, right? The guy who he's been all over the news because when the protests were happening, he tried to defend his own property. He had his rifle out, and he's been getting all this hate from the left. And now I believe he's announced that he's running for Congress because, Missouri, thank you, Dwight, because he's standing up and he believes in 2A rights.
Yeah, I think I know the case you're talking about where the couple went outside. Tough case. I don't want to comment on the case. I'm not sure if it's still going on or if there's any appeals. Obviously, we all need to be watching this kind of stuff, and we all need to be careful also with our firearms. With owning a firearm comes extreme great liability and extreme great
responsibility.
And I teach all of my HQL students that, listen, you're going to have to hold yourselves to a higher bar. If you do something, you better be able to explain it, okay? Especially if you do something really just you normally wouldn't do. Well, why did you do that? And if you say, I don't know, that ain't good enough.
All right. Well, I think that's a great note to land on. And I would say anybody who's interested in getting their HQL, look up Barry Donadio, look up the classes he's doing. I know that we're going to be trying to get one set up in Montgomery County coming up, but he does them all over Maryland. And if you're interested in talking to a really knowledgeable guy, getting your license, feeling good about it, that's the guy you want to see. And if you live in St. Mary's County and you're looking for an amazing delegate, Deborah is your girl. Donate to her site, get involved. But that's our show for this week. Thank you both for being on. I think that this was a really great conversation we were able to have, and I'm sure this will be one that's requested to have you guys back again. Deb, you might get your own show to talk about your race as well. But we will be back next Wednesday with your regularly scheduled hosts and another great guest, and we will see you all next week. Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thanks.